What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. This is the So I Was Thinking podcast. I'm Felipe, joined by my co-host.
What's up, Ron Keeley, the legend.
Off to a great start on this episode. Hey, listen, if you are just tuning in for the first time, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, MySpace.
We're at MySpace?
LinkedIn. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Not the Onion. It's So I Was Thinking newsletter. We send it directly via the Pony Express. And
so confused right now.
You can like, subscribe, and share this video on YouTube because we're on there too, because it's 2021, new year, new us. Once again, this episode is made possible by my friend, the man, the myth, the legend. He once wrestled a whole baloney to the death and won.
A whole baloney?
A whole... Don't question it, because it makes me laugh.
Seriously?
Yeah.
One
a
baloney?
whole Christmas ham.
Quit going back on your word.
If you want to record a podcast...
Things. I need answers.
He's your man. If you want to record an album, he's your man. If you like the sound your grandma's dentures make when it's fizzling in the cup as she's cleaning them at night before she goes to bed, he can record that too.
That's
so
real?
I was thinking records. No. Rabbit hole records.
Is that the first time you've gotten that wrong?
Today is the
I
first
think that
time.
was the first time.
Well, it's only Rabbit hole records.
This
like
episode's gonna be crazy, guys.
Oh man, like him. Ask him any questions on Facebook. He's the guy. He can do it all, except for video, because you can't borrow my phone and do it.
I mean,
Shot on iPhone, Apple. I need a new MacBook. So here we go. Shameless plug for things, by the way, is my specialty. I'm the king of subtlety as I take a sip from our sponsor, Coca-Cola. So refreshing. Keeps the polar bears alive. Save the
I'm
Arctic.
sure this is perfectly legal. They're not actually sponsoring us.
Not yet. Not yet. Along with Hydro Flask. I'm still waiting for my free bottle.
What did
I'm
you
in a
drink
mood.
before this?
Coke.
Oh, yeah. Coke.
It's the original taste Coke. Anyway, today's
Sorry.
Well, I have no idea what you said. Today's episode, we have a very interesting topic.
Oh, what is that?
We're going to talk about culture. We've actually titled this episode For the Culture.
Interesting. See, I'm under the impression that all I can watch and listen to are like Adventures in Odyssey, Pier Flicks, and like Bible Man.
Yeah, you're right. End of the episode. Guys, thank you
Have a
for
great
tuning
night.
in. We're so glad you did. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Man, that was a hard one to play. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, like what can you be a Christian and appreciate non-Christian things? Can you be a Christian and appreciate the culture around you? And what does that look like?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think it's very relevant, especially since nowadays there's so many different cultures and there's so much different media that you can take in. Like, we live in a society where there's genres of music. Back when Jesus was around, I don't think people had a favored genre of music.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about, but especially with technology, it's just you can get inundated by so much, and not all of it's Christian. So how do you tell the difference between something that's Christian and something that's not Christian, and how do you filter it? Like, what can and can't you listen to?
Yeah. Again, I think the best way to address this topic is also to think of not as a do and don't, but is it leading you closer, or is it leading you towards Jesus, or is it taking you away from your relationship with Jesus? Are you growing in your faith, or are you weakening in your faith? Are you Like what's happening here. So I mean, like, let's talk about culture for a second, because there's a lot that goes with that, right? Like fashion. Like right now, if you are watching us on YouTube, Rowan and I are matchy. It's the flannel episode. We got the plaid going because we got the lights. It's purple. We
It's
got
pink. What do you mean?
That's purple. Anyway,
You bugging.
anyway,
That's
you
pink.
know, Rowan's rocking some nice Vans, some skinny jeans. That was hefty. I don't know why I did that.
You said Vans. I gotta show them.
You know, like can you like fashion? Can you like music? Can you listen to music that's not Christian? Can you watch movies that aren't on PureFlix? Can you like, are you able to enjoy art? Are you able to enjoy food? Are you able to whatever? Like, what role does culture play in how we follow Jesus? And do we get to experience it? Do we get to enjoy it? Do we get to whatever? And what does that look like? Like, do we set limits? Do all of those things? I think this is going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, we should probably dig into the Bible for our answer.
Absolutely.
Actually, you know what? I think this episode is just gonna be opinion based.
False. False.
Okay, so for this episode, we're going to dive into 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23.
What does it say?
It says, move your mic, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law. Through I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having law. To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share its blessings. And that's it. Just do whatever you want. Wrong context. The verse after it says, so this is verse 24 and 27. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but not only one who competes in the games goes into strict training? They do it to get a crown that...
You skipped a bit.
Did I?
Yeah. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize.
Oh, sorry for my inability to read. I was homeschooled. So, that is while doing research for this episode, I actually found this verse for the first time, and it gave me a ton to think about. So basically what Paul is saying is to win people over, absolutely, like, become one of them. Like, or I don't want to use the word conform, but, like, absolutely relate to people. Absolutely, like, become accessible to people. Don't become a snob to people.
Yeah.
But there's an underlying thing. This is Bible in context. This is why we put the verses afterward. Do not get distracted by that. Because if you get distracted by it, then you're conforming. That's the difference between relating to somebody and conforming to somebody. Do not conform to somebody.
Exactly. But I mean, like, that's a good point, right? So, like, I used to be a youth leader.
Oh,
to be a youth leader, like, this is how I met Rowan. I wanted to beat Rowan at every single game that we played in youth group, but, like, it was at the same time that I was his leader, I wanted to, like, relate to Rowan, and so we found ways to relate. As a how old are you? 13-year-old. I love Marvel movies. He loved Marvel movies. I was able to relate to Rowan and talk to Rowan about Marvel movies. Like, we found commonality there. Like, at work, I can find commonality in life experience with other people, and I can talk to other people. I do not, though, however, have to act like a 13-year-old to relate to Rowan. You know, like to some extent, we did write "butt on the wall" at a youth conference, and it's how we actually
There
bonded.
are exceptions.
There are exceptions. I am the biggest child of them all, but you know, like in some cases, like you know, like there's context to this. Like we're not going to go out and we're not going to go, you know, like go into sin just to win people in sin. You know, like
Yeah.
we can absolutely communicate and relate and have things in common and not be weird and still be part of the culture, you know, like at the same time, I'm not going to go, you'd be like, I'm going to go pose for Playboy so that I could win some of the Playboy models to Jesus. Because no,
It's not how that works.
that's not how that works. Because we're also called to holiness. We're also called to be set apart, right? Like I'm not going to go and like cheat on my wife or cheat on my girlfriend so that I can now relate to people that have committed adultery. You know, like that's not how that works. There's context to it because Paul says, therefore, I do not run like somebody running aimlessly. Paul is on a mission. Everything that he does, he still has a purpose. And he says he makes his body a slave so that after he has preached to others, he will not be disqualified for the prize, meaning eternal life, meaning salvation.
Yeah.
So everything that he does, being a Jew to the Jew, being a Gentile to the Gentiles, being under the law to some, not being under the law to others, also that they would know Jesus, but at the same time keeping himself fully under God's grace and God's law so that he will not be disqualified.
And I love how the reason why I love this verse is because I'd never heard of it before. And I love the fact that this is brought up because this is a question that I've had for a pretty long time. And this is actually a question that I came up with. But it makes sense, right? Like, why? Like, if someone likes different kinds of music than me, and if that's one thing I can relate to them with,
Yeah.
then absolutely I'm gonna just listen to their music a little bit so that I can be like, hey, that song you showed me, it's actually really cool. Like, and have a conversation about it. Because realistically, we don't just go up to people and be all buddy and be like, hey, do you want to be saved? And then being like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, that's one down for today, like 5 more to go. No, like you have to develop relationships. And as cheesy as it sounds, like their love has to be kind of developed. Like when you love somebody and they like love you back. Love as in like, hey, Rowan, he's a pretty nice guy. Like I enjoy hanging out with him, even though I'm not. But
That's not true.
like you have to have that like mutual relationship before you can even bring up Christ almost.
Exactly.
And have it be effective. Of course, you can go up to anybody. I've had people like yell at me on the street and be like, "You can't run from Jesus forever." And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know you. Like, you
Yeah.
have no idea who I am.
Yeah. And I think like part of the cool thing about this is right, like we're not looking at a list of do's and don'ts. We're looking at this is like, where's your heart? So like one example of this is like Rowan and I, one of our favorite artists, we talk about him often. His name is John Bellion. For Christmas, part of my gift to Rowan was I got us tickets to his online concert because obviously
Best concert ever.
Concerts aren't happening in person.
Also, the only concert I've ever been to. Continue.
So we went to this concert and, you know, John Bellion has somewhat like Christian influences and he talks a little bit about Jesus and God in some of his songs or whatever. But for the most part, like he's not a Christian artist. But he's a really, 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 really talented musician. Now, I am nowhere near that level of talented. I can play the piano, I can play the guitar, I can play the drums. You know, like I love music and I understand music and I love music that's done well and I love music that's done right. And so we're watching this and like there's a part of me that's just like in awe of what he's able to do and of what he's able to accomplish because I'm watching this concert going, oh my God, this guy is so talented. And to me, when I look at something like that to me is the image of God, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that God put like a fingerprint inside of each and every single one of us that in some way somehow reflects a little bit of him back to the people around us, like like as I'm watching John Bellion do what he's made to do and create music and sing and perform, I'm like, man, like I see God in this. And so in that moment, my eyes aren't on John Bellion and whatever, they're being turned back to God. And I'm like, man, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's not even to be super spiritual. If I watch a movie with like a really, really great actor, if there's a really, really great scene, not a Christian movie, just a regular movie or whatever, and I see some really good acting, I appreciate it so much because that is really hard to do. And you're getting to see somebody do what they're made to do. So like, one of my favorite movies, like for that is like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant, where he gets mauled by a bear. And he just crawls through the floor after being mauled by a bear. Like, it is an intense scene. It's the first one that he won an Oscar for, right? And it's like, it's some intense acting, and he does it so well. And I'm sitting there in awe, like, are you kidding me? If I had to act like I got mauled by a bear and crawl through the woods, it would be the most pathetic thing you've ever seen. But when he does it and he's really good at it, it's like, wow. Like, that is God-given ability. That is God-given gifts, And so, like, I watch the movies. I listen to the music. Not all of the music. Some music is trash. I'm going to be honest with you. There are some songs that you cannot tell me that there is good in them because they're terrible lyrics. They're terrible beats. The person who's singing them has no talent, and it is not God-given talent. It is, I got money, and I'm going to put this album out, and somebody's going to buy it, and I'm going to make music that... Think Rebecca Black and Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody really liked that song. It's ironic. And she made it because she had money. And
let's not throw shade. That's an
I'm
iconic
not throwing shade.
Iconic.
It's
song.
iconic because of how bad it was.
Agree to disagree.
It's Friday. Like, nobody's like, that is a jam. Anyway. And so, like, we're watching, like, I'm watching this and I'm like, this is so good. Some stuff isn't good, and I do like I'm careful about what I allow into my life. But again, does it affect my life with God? Does it affect my relationship with God? If it does, if it takes my eye away from Jesus and it gets me to focus on other things, or if my habits start to change, or if my language starts to change, or if my thoughts start to change and I'm no longer on track to being closer to Jesus or looking more like Jesus, then we have an issue. Then culture is now influencing us when we're meant to influence culture.
Yeah, and it's kind of going back to Citizens of Heaven, our second ever episode, where I said you can't transform what you conform to.
Yeah.
Absolutely relate to people, but when you're in the position where whatever you're relating to is you're really just conforming to, then you're not in a position to transform anybody.
Exactly.
If you're listening to bad music that's making you just vile, right? Then, and you're saying you're doing it just to like relate to your friends at school, you're not relating to your friends at school, you're conforming.
Yeah.
And there you need to have the discernment on when do you stop? When are you in a position to actually go out and be like, hey, this is kind of a good song. Find something good about it. Again, not everything is... excuse me. Not everything is good.
Yeah.
Like, not everything should be appreciated.
Yeah.
But, especially in my household, both my parents are very good artists. So we have a lot of art in our house, and some of it isn't very appropriate to some people who are sheltered. But, like, it's kind of going back to what Felipe is saying. Like, a lot of artists find the beauty in God's design, whether it's the human body or animals or something like that. We don't have weird pictures hanging on our wall. I want to make that clear. But a lot of art...
But think like the statue of David, right? That Leonardo da Vinci sculpted. It's a naked David.
Makes me laugh every time.
Or even like Renaissance art, like it's usually naked people.
But it's it's
Not that
appreciating
we're saying go look at Renaissance art just because it's naked people. By the way, we're going to clarify that. But there's art in there.
to that point. It's all about how you perceive it, right? If you're looking at it just to see naked dudes, then there's
That's
a
weird.
problem.
That's
Yeah,
weird.
that's a problem. But if you're looking at it and appreciating the artist's or the sculptor's skill and their craftsmanship and appreciating their attention to detail to all the intricacies of the human body, then yeah, absolutely. God designed our bodies and designed nature to be appreciated.
Yeah.
Like, look at all the wonderful things we see in the world today. Like, God made that for a purpose, and He made it so that we could appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So go out and appreciate God's nature, but don't conform to it.
Exactly. And I mean, like, let's talk about art for a second, because like one of my favorite paintings ever is the creation of Adam, and it's in the Sistine Chapel, and Michelangelo painted it, and it's that infamous thing where it's like the two hands touching each other like this, and that's, you know, like it's Adam and God, and that's where they meet, and God is creating Adam. That's like, now at this point in my relationship with Jesus, like, you know, I've thought, and I don't have a tattoo, but I've thought, like, if I were to get a tattoo, I would get that design kind of and put a cross in the middle, because my sin and God met at the cross. Like, I was actually made alive again at the cross. And so, like, I look at that picture and I think about it often, because it's like, yes, like this is the story, is that God reached down for me. Like, God made His way to me. And it's awesome, right? But let's look at another verse, because this one came up, and I think this is like the mindset that we need to have, right? Hebrews 12, verse 1 and 2 says this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before Him, He endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." So the author of Hebrews is telling us that we are actually surrounded by people that are watching our every move. Mm-hmm. And in order for us to finish the race set before us, we need to throw off every weight and every sin that trap us. So that verse to me clearly says that not everything is a sin,
Yeah.
but some things are a weight. And some things slow us down, and they take our eyes off of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And those things need to go.
Yeah, and I think this also is important because like, we need to have people that we can lean on, and we need to have people who can be like, yo, this is weighing you down. You need to check yourself on this. Like, Felipe is a good example for me in this instance, because there's been a lot of times where Felipe is like, hey, I see you acting this way, or I see you treating these people this way. I don't like you. Something needs to change. And maybe this is just me, and I'm able to take criticism well, not trying to toot my own horn, but I see that I'm like, you know what? You're kind of right. I am being kind of a jerk. And so then I make steps. It's not always easy, but I always try to make steps to improve. And so that's the importance of having 1, 2, even 3, if you're lucky enough, like friends that are able to identify things in you so that you can mature and grow up.
Exactly. And if we're talking about things like weights and sins, right? So like, sin is obvious. Sin is always obvious. Mm-hmm. Like, the Bible is very clear about what sin is. And if we're talking about appreciating stuff in the culture, you do not need to go get drunk every single night. You do not need to go get wasted. You do not need to go get trashed. You do not need to sleep around in order to appreciate culture.
Yeah.
Right? But take it for example, like at the beginning of this year, we're now on YouTube, we're now on TikTok. Right? Like, there's a lot of bad on both of those sites. There's a lot of good on both of those sites. We decided to join TikTok and YouTube and do a little bit more because we want to spread the word. We want to spread the message of Jesus Christ. Yeah. Right? So as of right now, like, it is TikTok and YouTube and that stuff, they're not sins. Mm-hmm. But let's say that, like, now I have TikTok, and now Sorry, excuse me. That was gross. Now, instead of reading my Bible, I spend 30 hours a day,
30 hours a day?
30 hours a day and 400 days a week on TikTok. And my life and my relationship with God is slowly and probably quickly at that point just deteriorating. I'm not reading my Bible.
Yeah.
I'm not taking time to pray. I'm not taking time to worship. And instead of like listening to worship music or listening to whatever while driving, I'm on TikTok. You know what I'm saying? Like TikTok is now a weight, and it is slowing me down from running the race that God set before me. Or let's put, like whatever, it could be sports for some people, like if you're on a team or whatever, and sports become a priority, and you would rather go to practice, you'd rather do this, you'd rather do that, and you start skipping out on church on Sunday, you start skipping out on youth group, you don't pray in the morning because you got practice, you don't take time to read your Bible after school because you got practice, and you're tired, and you're never reading your Bible because I just had a really long day and I need to get to bed and I need a shower and I have homework that I didn't do and I'm not going to read my Bible because of this and this. That can wait. Like, that is now a weight. Right? And that is something that you got to leave behind. Or you got to learn how to address it. Right? So like there are weights and there are sins, and those things we need to throw off. And Paul isn't like saying like, you know what, like get a smaller version of it and just clip it on your belt. Like Paul is saying like throw it off. Get rid of it. Get rid of every sin. That one is obvious. But like when we talk about culture, like having an Instagram and Snapchat and having social media now in our day and age is part of being part of the culture.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't really relate to people because people are on TikTok. Yo, have you seen this? Yo, have you on Instagram? You can't relate to people. You don't know what's happening on Facebook, on Snapchat. You can't relate to people if you're not on those things. That's called being part of the culture. But if you're struggling to fix other areas of life, and sometimes those weights can lead to sin because those, like there's a lot of good on those websites, there's a lot of bad on those websites. If it's now leading to sin, get rid of it. You like don't risk it for the culture. It's like what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9 verses 24 through 27. He doesn't run like somebody running aimlessly. He doesn't fight a boxer beating the air. He makes his body his slave so that after he's preached to others, he will not be disqualified for the price of finishing the race set before us. And it's the same thing as throwing off all the weights and throwing off all the sin. Like there's a purpose to this.
Yeah.
Like what's the purpose of being part of the culture? What's the purpose of watching these movies? Like they're good, they're entertainment. There's nothing wrong with that. I like watching the UFC. I like watching movies. I like listening to music. I love music. Is it going to affect my life, my relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, it's all about focus. Are you focused on furthering the kingdom of God and furthering your relationship with God, or are you focused on, or are you focused on pleasing people, or are you focused on pleasing? Wait.
Yeah, pleasing yourself.
Okay, cool. I can say that. Because wherever your focus is, that's what's really important, because at the end of the day, those people that you're trying to impress aren't going to be there for you.
Yeah.
Right? God is. And no matter how hard you work, some days you're going to feel like crap, and some days you're going to mess up big time.
Yep.
You're going to let yourself down. But God will never leave, and God is always there for you.
Yep.
And so, like, prioritize. Keep your eye on the goal.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be in a verse somewhere. Keep your eye on the prize. I think that's probably
fix your eyes on Jesus.
There you go. I wasn't paying attention.
And I think one last thing to note is that when Paul wrote his letters to all of the churches, Paul always addressed the culture. And Paul knew, and here's the interesting thing, is that Paul was well versed in the culture of his day. Paul knew, as he was writing letters to different cities and to different churches in different cities, he knew what the culture in those cities was like because he spent time there.
Yeah.
So I grew up in New York City. New York City is an entirely different culture than Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Where we live. I know what New York culture is like. If I moved to Madison, Wisconsin and pretended to live in a bubble of New York, that just doesn't work. the culture is entirely different here. I need to know the culture of Madison. I need to know that it's rude to honk at people here. You know, like I had to do it the other day and I felt terrible. But in New York, you know, I went home for Christmas and people were just honking left and right. And I was like, I missed this. But, you know, but like knowing the culture is important. Paul knew the culture and he addressed the culture in his letters.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, you know, like there were some cities that Paul would write to, and a big thing in their cities, a big thing in the cultures of those cities would be worshiping like Roman gods at other temples and offering sacrifices to those gods. And Paul would write to the churches and be like, listen, I know that everybody in your city does this, but we don't worship those gods. We don't offer sacrifices to things made of stone. We worship the one and true living God. So offer your body as a sacrifice to God. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. Like Paul was very clear about addressing the culture, saying like, yo, I know everybody in your city does this. You are called out. You are different. You are set apart. You are God's holy chosen people. You don't have to do this. Yeah. But at the same time, go love the widows. Go love the orphans. Go do this. Go do that. Go preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. He didn't tell the Christians to form a bubble in their cities, but he said some of the stuff that your culture does, we don't do. You can live there. You can love your city. You can love the people around you. You can love where you get to live. You don't have to do everything that they do.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Wow. So in the end, just be Amish.
Exactly. That's the point of this thing is you can join us here in Wisconsin. We're going to be starting our own community.
Yeah. If you're good at building houses,
please contact us.
Hit us up.
Build a house. If you can hunt, we need you. If you know how to...
I can build a bow and arrow. Maybe. Find me a good stick and some string. We might have to stop.
What can I do? I can design us a really cool logo.
City kid. New Yorker.
I'll beat somebody up, though.
I'm actually gonna... People might not like that because a lot of our viewers are from New York. Sorry if you're from New York. New York isn't stupid.
I'll hit him later. Yo, New York, I got us.
Chicago is better.
Chicago what? Chicago what?
Better pizza,
anyway.
bro.
Oh, we're not having this conversation. It's a casserole. It's a deep dish mess. That's what that is. Still, it's good. It's not pizza. Anyway, any closing thoughts?
Other than Chicago is better? No.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of So I Was Thinking Podcast. Once again, if this is your first time listening, feel free to like us. You can check out all the buttons and things and find us. And you know what? Support us because we are trying to grow our platform. We're trying to reach more people and tell them about Jesus. And your support actually helps us do that. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, MySpace.
You gotta stop saying that because we're not on.
We're not on LinkedIn
or MySpace
yet, or MySpace anymore because it's an obsolete website. You can find us on Among Us. You can find us on Club Penguin at So I Was Thinking Penguins. So I was penguining.
Yep. Also, drink a Coke. Coke a day keeps the doctor away.
Coke a day helps diabetes.
That's factual. Look at that. The polar bear.
Refreshing. It helps the polar bears stay alive.
Biz. Pull the biz.
Did you say what?
You said bear's weird. Pull the biz.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.